Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and this is episode number 197. We have our resident cellular healing specialist, Dr. Dan Pompa, on the line, and today we welcome special guest, Professor Brian Peskin. And boy, do we have a show for you guys today. You are in for a treat. If you listen to episode 188, we interviewed Dr. Jeff Matheson on toxic fish oils and some of the issues with that. And now we're going to dig in a lot deeper with Professor Peskin, who has done so much research in this area. I have to say, I threw out all my fish oils this morning after reading your book, the PEO solution. So you guys are really going to learn a lot in this episode. There's so much to discuss here. So before we dig in, let me tell you a little bit about Professor Peskin, and then he's going to share all of his research. So Professor Brian Peskin is a theoretical research scientist specializing in lipids-based pharmacognosy, a class of drugs drug-derived from plant-based sources, specifically seed oils. A notable benefit with this approach is the minimization and elimination of harmful side effects. He focuses specifically on the modulation of physiologically targeted essential fatty acids in the cell membrane, termed parent essential oils, and their eicosanoid metabolites. He's a translational science expert with a long-term interest in diabetes and its underlying pathophysiology. In 2002, he began extensive research on the relationship of PEOs and their metabolites to cancer and cardiovascular disease. Mr. Peskin's work is focused on pathways that maximize oxygen delivery and blood flow to the human cell and tissue functionality. This knowledge allowed him to design a novel investigational new drug to heal chronic diabetes, ulcers, and wounds. Peskin holds 3 patents with key composition of matter utility patent granted in 2014. A former MIT-trained engineer, Mr. Peskin founded the field of life systems engineering science in 1995, bringing the cause-effect accountability of engineering into the life sciences. The focus is on supporting and optimizing our natural physiologic processes, not blocking or impeding metabolic pathways. Utilizing an interdisciplinary approach, the results are novel, highly effective for specific chronic diseases and disorders across diverse patient populations. So welcome, Professor Peskin, to Cellular Healing TV. We are so excited to dig into this topic.
Thanks so very much for having me.
Professor, listen, this show is going to create a lot of controversy, and I love that because I have been blowing the lid off this for some years. And when I do, and it's funny because we had a conversation before coming on the show, you saw me on Vaccines Revealed, and I talked about how wrong fish oils was and blah, blah, blah. And boy, did I get some hate mail. And I battled on the internet with people, and I sent them all these science, partly some of your stuff, right? And then, of course, I didn't hear back. I said I knew you before I knew you, meaning that I've been into this topic for some years now. And inadvertently, I've pulled up much of your work. Tell them, I want our viewers, because I want them to understand, this has been a passion for no other reason for you except to expose the truth. So let's get that clear right now, right? I mean, you don't have, that you're not exposing this truth because, you have, major ties. Yeah, your science has gone into some products, but this is a passion of you because of it being, tell the story, man. Understand where you're coming from.
You're happy to. Well, I'm an MIT trained engineer. The only reason I'm in the field of nutritional medical science is because my wife became diabetic in her 30s, doing everything, quote, right, that the physicians told her. And then the physician's result made her worse. She went to a big clinic in California and came back with worse blood sugar. So it's the failure of a lot of the medical profession is the only reason I'm here. And it was, Brian, I don't know what to do. So I did what everybody else would do. Went down to the health store, and I'd get a book, maybe by Atkins, that says protein is great and fat's great. And then there'd be an opposite one by Dr. Ornish saying just the opposite. So it's who do I believe? And my answer is, I don't believe anybody. I'm a scientist. I believe the science. So is there a field of science that tells us how we work? Yeah, there's 2, physiology and biochemistry. So luckily I live in Houston. We have one of the top 10 medical libraries in America. And it's right over at MD Anderson Cancer Center. And they were kind enough to let me spend about 5 years in the library. And 330,000 volumes they have in that library. I had my hands on an 1850 Lancet, which is even today the world's premier medical journal. And after years looking at all the science, it was, my goodness, the science says A, and everybody is doing the opposite of A. No wonder they're so sick. And that's what got me into this whole thing, that somebody's got to start publishing heavy science. Because even Dr. Atkins, even though he was right in most of what he said, he had no science. It was just studies. Well, studies aren't science, and the study should confirm the known biochemistry and physiology, not be opposite to it, like is the case with fish oil in many instances. So that's what got me into the field. And this is no hobby with me. It's all I do. I specialize in EFA and their metabolites, which are called the eicosanoids. I came up with the term parent EFAs, parent essential oils, because there's only two. There's parent omega-3 and parent omega-6, meaning we have to get them from food. We can't make them. We can make all the other ones, EPA, DHA, the big fish oil components we make, but everybody uses the term improperly. And EFA is not DHA or EPA. EFA stands for essential, meaning.
Let me stop you right there for our viewers, because right there, believe it or not, we could lose people. Okay, so the parent oils, these are the ones that are truly essential fatty acids.
Yes.
We call EPA, essential fatty acids. Okay, they are, according to you and according to me,
according to everybody in the science,
right, linoleic acid and alpha linoleic acid.
Absolutely.
Now, the reason I said according to us, because many listening are going to say, well, DHA is also essential fatty acid.
No.
And, so that's fish oil. By the way, those listening, when we talk DHA, write down that's fish oil, okay? And also, just kind of categorizing. Let me just do one more little categorization. Write this down, folks. Linoleic acid is omega-6. Alpha linoleic acid, those are the parent fats that we all need. That's the omega-3. Okay, Doc, Professor, take it from there.
Absolutely. It's not essential if your body can make it. And
Right.
body makes all the long chain, they're called derivatives. And this is in the literature. Even parents are in the literature. Parent essential oil is my term, but parent essential fatty acids are in the literature. I didn't make this up. But the term has become so misused. Everybody thinks EFAs are DHA and EPA from fish oil. That's absolutely not true. Even the fish don't make those oils. They get it from eating algae. Most people don't even know this. So we've been highly misled. And one of the biggest things, Doc, is the parents stay in parent form 99%. They are the brick and mortar
Right.
of 100 trillion cells. And when I saw that in the literature, this is in molecular biology of the cell, this is in the medical textbooks. And that's where I live. I live in the medical textbooks, and then I look at studies to confirm the science. So 99% of LA and ALA, parent omega-3, parent omega-6, stay in that form in the body.
Stop right there, because this is important. Because the old literature, before we had better ways of determining how much from these parent oils converts to DHA, as an example.
Yes.
We thought it was 15%. We thought it was a higher percent. Anyway, maybe 15%. We've learned with better equipment, with better technology, we've learned that very little, like you're saying, 0.5%, at best 1% converts, meaning the body, if it needs DHA, will convert it. So all of the studies done on how much DHA we need are based on false numbers. Am I right on that?
You're 100% right. And what the entire medical profession thought was exactly what you just said. All of the parents will get converted to the derivatives because they're what's important. They didn't understand cell physiology, and it's 25 to 33% of every cell membrane. The lipid component, which is half of every cell membrane, is 25 to 33% parent omega-6, parent omega-3. There is virtually no EPA, DHA in there. Now, the brain has it. We can talk about that after, but your average cell membrane doesn't. It is non-existent. So there was superb tests with radioisotope testing by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the National Institutes of Health in 2001, 2009, 2010, positron emission testing, where they tagged it and saw exactly how much DHA the brain uses on a daily basis and it's 3.6 milligrams. 3.6. That's the average.
I think I read somewhere at best 7.5%.
That's on the tail end.
Sorry.
I love dogs.
Sorry. My son will help about that. Sorry about that.
So the average is 3.6, 3.2, 3.4. It's in the threes. When you look at the distribution, a normal distribution, at the maximum, it's 7.2. And this is for a big guy. It could be, that's it. So if you want to say, okay, the brain is the biggest depository, it's 14% DHA. The eyes are the next, and then it goes very little after that, double it. That I will give you 14 milligrams a day. Now look and see what the recommendations for fish oil is. It's 20 to 500 times that, which is called a suprapharmacologic overdose. You're being poisoned.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's ridiculous. And look, you know, you're making a strong argument that
you have all these references.
It's not only good for you, but actually dangerous. So, you know, let's kind of stay there a second, because one of the things that I had read years ago, and there's an important fat, omega-6 fat, in the mitochondrial membrane. That's where we make cell energy, called cardiolipin. It's so important that our cells live and die based on that fat. I mean, literally, that's how important it is, right? So I read that when people are taking these DHA, the omega-3, and become omega-3 dominant, which is very easy according to you, that it replaces that cardiolipin and it creates all this dysfunction in the mitochondria. Okay, that's just one study, but talk more about some of the damaging effects by taking this fish oil.
You're absolutely correct. It gets displaced because the body can't burn it up. So when there's a super physiologic overdose, it displaces the critical parent omega-6. And for example, it's 100 to 1 in the brain of parent omega-6 to parent omega-3. Arachidonic acid, which is a long-chain omega-6 metabolite, is 10% of the brain. We're never told this. So DHA is 14%. AA, the omega-6 side, is 10%. Well, to an engineer science guy like me, that's called the same order of magnitude. It's not double. It's not 100 times. It's not 10 times. It's virtually the same. It's 40% difference. It's less than, it's not even double. So we need to go there and look at the science instead of emotion. That's the problem today. You've hit it right on the head. But because of this displacement, for example, skin cancer is through the roof, and the dermatologists don't have a clue. Well, your skin is 100% parent omega-6. There's no DHA, EPA in there. And I wrote a paper correlating the highest fish oil consuming countries to the highest rates of cancer.
Yeah, no,
of course, I was slammed on that because nobody wants. But fish oil goes rancid spontaneously. We can talk about that in a minute too. But the intima, the inner lining of the artery, any cardiologist will know this. 100% parent omega-6.
Right.
If you start taking all this fish oil, guess what? It's not all parent omega-6 anymore. The fish oil gets forcefully shoved in there, and we are in trouble. And it takes 18 weeks to get rid of the super physiologic overdose of fish oil. This experiment was done and published. And I give you all this in PEO Solutions. So I hope people will really check that out and look at the science before they make an emotional judgment.
Right. So, I mean, look, we know, I talk about the importance on this show of the cell membrane. You know, it's everything.
Yes.
Right? It's everything as far as why people still don't feel well. We have to fix the membranes, the outer and the inner membranes. Your point is that the destruction, the problem with the membranes is the fact that most Americans are, in fact, eating denatured omega-6. And we're going to build on that. Okay, so, you know, bad omega-6, no doubt, is playing a role. However, we're taking overdoses of fish oil, omega-3, and that is causing another problem. So we're getting bad omega-6. We're taking omega-3, mostly bad, and we're creating this destabilized cell membranes, which is leading to cancer, more Alzheimer's. These are studies that I pull up. more cardiovascular disease,
Yes.
more aches and pains. The very things that people are taking fish oil for, studies literally show it's making worse.
Yes. The quote solution is actually the cause of the problem.
Yeah.
It's that bad.
So talk about the problem. Okay.
Adulteration of the omega-6, like you said, is the
But
number
the
one
omega-6
problem
is the key. The omega-6, to your point, is the solution. We have to stabilize the omega-6 in the cell to fix the cell.
11-to-1 is the ratio in the body. If you look at all the tissue in the fat stores,
4-to-1.
11 times parent omega-6 to parent omega-3 is the ratio. Muscle is 6.5-to-1 parent omega-6, and that makes 50% of our body. The average organ, the brain, well, aside from the brain, but the heart, the lungs, 4-to-1 parent omega-6 to parent omega-3. When you look at the fat stores, they're about 22-to-1 parent omega-6. So nature has given us a store of what we need. And the biggest problem today is the adulteration, Doc, is because food processors need long shelf life. You can't have cookies and cakes and processed food smelling like fish that's gone bad. So they shut down the oxygen transfer. And guess what? Your mitochondria dies. So even if the omega-6 goes into that cardiolipin, which is 100% parent omega-6, by the way, for EFAs, there's no DHA, there's no EPA, it's 100% parent omega-6. It's non-functional. So just imagine you have 100 trillion cell membranes with a big chunk of non-functionality, because all the frying, all the baking, all the cooking has oils that stop the oxygen transfer so they don't go bad. Even the finest restaurants are using this.
Yes.
Tragedy. They should be using saturated fats because they can't go bad, but they're using the omega-6 oils. They never use omega-3 oils because they're too reactive anyway. So they never use, you don't cook in flax oil.
No.
You don't fry in fish oil. You just don't do it. It goes bad instantly. So
the point, let me say one point though. The fish oils are 20 times, they're polyunsaturated fats, 20 times more oxidative and fragile than the omega-6. But to your point, the key to fixing the membranes is getting the correct omega-6 undenatured, which is not happening. It's all processed. It's all bad. So
actually, it's up to 42 times.
Oh, wow.
The oxidation level, the ascorbic iron catalyst, 42, it's unbelievable. The basal is about 23 times, and just normal is 6 times. It is horrible how these things oxidize. See, people don't understand fish oil for the fish is its antifreeze. You can only either have alcohol or long-chain fats. Vodka won't freeze in the freezer, right? Stays liquid. Neither will the long-chain fats. But fish is at 30, 40 degrees. We're at 98.6. So you put the fish on us, 98.6, spontaneously oxidized, rancid. That's called lipofuscin. And anybody with age spot stock has rancid oils. And if they have it on their skin, it's in their organs. And Dr. Rowan, superb integrative medicine, used to be the editor of Second Opinion. He showed me an article looking at different temperatures of fish, from the cold water fish to the warm water, because there are fish that live in 70-degree water compared to 30-degree, 14 times less EPA and DHA than the cold water fish. And what are we doing? We're taking more in a very hot temperature. We are using all of our antioxidants on this overdose of fish oil, and nothing is left for the normal functioning. That's why everybody is so sick.
Wow. All right, let's talk about omega-6, because according to you, this is the solution to the inflamed, dysfunctional membranes.
Huge part.
The right omega-6, undenatured, which obviously still can denature very easy, not 40 times like the fish oil, but a lot of the omega-6 are still polyunsaturated, still very fragile. What do we do?
It's not that fragile in the body. It virtually does not denature in the body.
Right. At least, but out here it does.
The biggest problem is called oxidized cholesterol. Everybody will say this. That's the cause of heart disease. It is well known and published. Dr. Spiteler talked about this, one of the top biochemists in Germany. It's esterified, meaning cholesterol, LDL-C transports the parent omega oils. So just picture a magnet. Here's the big cholesterol molecule. Boom. This is how they're transporting the bloodstream.
Got it.
They don't go bad when they're magnetized to the cholesterol. They're already bad from eating them. Okay. That's the biggest thing we're not told. It's virtually impervious to oxidation in the body. So so nature's very good. We are eating a poison in the oxidized omega-6, and just like you said, couple that with the overdose of fish oil. I'm amazed we can live at all. As an engineer, take water, put it in your gas tank, because you don't want to pay $3 a gallon for gasoline. You will run a mile and the engine will seize. Put the wrong stuff in us, we get sick, but we don't die right away. And if you do a short-term study, you may not see the bad effects. And that's typically what they do with fish oil studies, 3 months or less, and never the long-term effects, because fish oil acts like a long-term steroid. Yeah,
so, I do want to mention some of those studies. How are they all flawed? But before we do that, we're close to, people want to know this right now. I know they do. How do we get, if the omega-6 is the answer, and thank God they don't go oxidized in our body like fish oil does. If that's the answer, how do we make sure we're getting non-oxidized one before?
Question. Some omega-3 is the answer too, because you want a ratio in there. But the biggest thing is the omega-6 adulteration. It has to be organic. Cold press isn't good enough, so it has to be organically grown, because preservatives and chemicals shut down the oxygen transfer too. You don't want an oil that lasts forever like a trans fat. So it has to be organically grown, has to be organically processed, and that is the answer on the omega-6 side. Those two things, and it's hard to get. If you go into a commercial supermarket, you won't find it. All about the commercial supermarket is processed.
What about the organic expeller pressed safflower oil, sunflower oil, if they're expeller pressed?
Expeller press, as long as they're organic, it's okay. That is okay.
Okay. And then the expeller pressed sunflower. I'm just naming omega-6.
Here's a problem today. Most of the oils have been modified, not GMO. They've been naturally hybrid for frying, which means they have a high oleic acid, which is the omega-9, like olive oil, component. We don't need that. So most people, if you go to a health store, you will get, say, a safflower oil that is 90% omega-9, which is, again, a non-essential. It'll only have 10% of the parent omega-6, so it's not easy to find. Very difficult.
I ran off because I was like, aha, I want to talk, because you're exactly right on what you're saying. So this is a safflower oil that is very good with heat.
Yes.
But because it's the expeller pressed, I'm certain. And then, but here's the thing though, the polyunsaturated are 2 grams, the monosaturated are 11, because
your 10 to 1 is wrong. It doesn't give you enough of what you need. So even getting it organic isn't the answer. You typically have to go to supplements and find one where it's properly done.
Right. So at least this won't denature. All right, it's good to cook with, but I'm not getting the nutrition. I'm not getting the nutrition, and that's
not at all.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a negative. So there's 2 things.
Right.
How much of a negative is it, and how much of a positive is it? For example, a trans fat's a negative 20. Olive oil's a 0. It won't hurt you, but it won't help you at all. There's 7% parent omega-6 in olive oil. That's not enough to do anything. So you need a lot. Typically, the oil supplement, you need 60 to 70% active parent omega-6 and parent omega-3, and that's hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one that we talked about on a past show. I'll let Meredith reference it, but it's Pure Form, and that is based on your science, that particular product.
I believe it is.
This concept, and one of the things I like about it is the nitrogen they even put in each capsule to protect the omega-6 that's in there. And it's a 2-to-1 ratio, so there's 3. It's omega-6 to omega-3.
If we do need the parent omega-3, because remember, the average, it's 11 to 1. Now, we get omega-3 by eating food, too. It's in meat. I mean, we get this. So you're taking a supplement, but it's still in the food. I like organic, but it's not all bad. A lot of it's bad. 50% can be bad. But if 50% is bad, we're still getting 50% good. The key is you don't want 50% bad. That's why you take a supplement. You can live with 20% bad, no problem. And that's good today, believe it or not, with all the food processing. That's no problem. The problem is when you start hitting 35% or a third, Otto Warburg comes in, where if there's 35% oxygen deficiency in the cell over a long period of time,
Cancer, baby, yeah. And by the way, and it comes from the mitochondrial membrane.
Yes, sir.
And Otto Warburg, I know his work very well, turn of the century, talked about cardiolipin. That's that omega-6 fat that we said the cell liver dies from. That is key for the mitochondria. When that gets disrupted, now the mitochondria starts to make energy in an odd way. We'll just keep it simple for our listeners, in a very primitive glycolysis in the presence of oxygen.
Very inefficient.
Yeah, very inefficient, right. So anyways, okay, so according
to with the mitochondria, Doc, a cell can have 100 mitochondria. So we have a regular cell with one cell membrane that needs more parent omega-6 and omega-3 in the parent form, but you can have 100 mitochondria in there. That's 100% parent omega-6 in the cardiolipin. So it is really, really important to get the organic parent omega-6 along with the parent omega-3. You also want some GLA. We'll talk about that with the impaired delta-6 enzyme that everybody talks about.
Okay, let's talk diet. I mean, where can we get these from our diet? You said buying oils in store. You can buy oils very easily that are organic, that at least aren't a negative, but to get the amounts that we need, either a product, but what about some foods? I know Meredith would ask that.
They're in seeds and nuts. So flaxseed is very good for the omega-3 component. There's some omega-6, but it's about 3.5 to 1 reverse of what we need. So years ago, they used to just take flax oil. This was Budwig. Now with Budwig, in the 70s and 60s, we didn't have the adulteration of the omega-6 part. So people always ask me, well, what about her? I said, in her time, she was absolutely correct. But today, the fundamental problem is adulteration of the parent omega-6. So the seeds, sunflower seeds, excellent for parent omega-6. Safflower, most of the seeds are parent omega-6. Even the nuts, all omega-6. Walnuts are 5 times the parent omega-6 to the 1 part omega-3. And everybody will say, oh, the reason Seventh-day Advents eat a lot of walnuts is because of the omega-3. And I keep shaking my head. My goodness, don't they even look at a composition of chromatography? What is in there? It's not the omega-3. It's the omega-6 component. But they're in food, even eating meat. Grass-fed beef is 2 to 1 parent omega-6 to parent omega-3. So we're getting this, as long as you're eating unadulterated, unprocessed food, in a good amount, but most people aren't, and most people are going to restaurants, even the fine dining ones, they're cooking in adulterated oils. They don't know. They're not using coconut oil. It's too much money. They're not using ghee, clarified butter, organic. It's too much money. So I advise everybody, take a supplement. It may be $1.25 a day. And if you don't want to spend $1.25 a day on your health, there's nothing I can do for you.
No, I agree 100%. You know, we have a group of doctors, you know, this is what we're doing. You know, we're changing all of those things you said, grass-fed meat, getting them to eat these foods. And then because their membranes are destroyed, we're supplementing with these ratios of omega-6 to omega-3 with these oils that you're talking about. So it works. I'm telling you that from a clinical perspective, it works. You know, let me just.
That's why I wrote PEO Solution, and I hope people will really
buy the book. Buy the book. There it is behind you. Meredith can hold it up. Go ahead, Meredith.
I've got it. That's it. Yeah, it is.
And your website right now, before we forget, it's brianpeskin.com.
Yeah, B as in boy, RIAN, P as in parent, ESKIN.com. There's lots of science there. It won't cost you a nickel. You could check out the book, see the accolades, and there's scientific support on the internet that won't cost you anything either. But I write for physicians that are busy, and my charter is giving physicians the medical science they haven't seen before.
We appreciate it.
Read it, they're amazed. And this, for your group, this is required reading.
I agree. I was just going to say that. It's for every one of my doctors, and I know you're listening, so it's required reading. Absolutely. We're going to get you to my next seminar because our group, we're probably the largest doctor group that really understands this, Professor, honestly. Okay, I have two questions that I have to ask. Number one, I know Meredith's thinking this, so I'm just going to say it. Okay, what about roasted nuts? What does that do to those fragile omegas?
It's very good. It does impact them, but not a heck of a lot. Remember, there's a nice margin. So even if it's 10 or 15%, no issue compared to the goodness you get. So as long as it's organic to start, better be organic, and then you're okay. Excellent question.
Raw's better, but
absolutely.
Hey, even roasted it's still not heating it to the point of really, killing
it.
No. Okay, good. All right.
As long as they're not roasted in canola oil.
Yeah, exactly.
Dry roast.
Good oil, yes.
Yeah. All the vegetable oils and canola oils inflame the membrane beyond belief. So that's
dry roasted obviously is best.
Yeah. All right. So here's another question. I know our viewers, or at least some of our doctors, are thinking, okay, look, there's over 15,000 studies showing the benefits of fish oil. So what you're telling me, I'm stuck on it. They're thinking.
They're not all showing the benefits. There's 15,000 supposed studies.
How do you go against that? I mean, how do we answer to 15,000 studies? Now, I know some of them are bad studies, but couldn't there at least be a few?
I take the first 2 chapters of my book, How to Sufficiently Analyze a Study, with Probability and Statistics. The first thing you need to know is there's a 95% confidence interval. When studies are done, you go, okay, I want to be 95% confident. If I say it works, it works. Well, that means there's a 5% inherent error rate. I do 15,000 studies, and supposedly that's the number. Sounds insane to me, but supposedly that's the number. Well, what's 5% of 15,000? 750. What that means is you will see 750 studies saying fish oil works when it doesn't. That is the price you pay for a 5% error, and that is standard. I like 99% or 99.5%, but almost nobody does it. So there's the more studies you do, the higher the chance for error. It's called a false positive.
Right.
Most of the studies are not worth the paper they're printed on. I know what people are thinking. What? Well, when I went to MIT and did my thesis, we had to do an undergraduate thesis. My thesis advisor said, Brian, most of what's published is wrong, because I was reading a theoretical result on a vibration of reeds. It's what I wanted to do it on a clarinet reed. And I said, this doesn't make sense to me. It's wrong. I'm wrong somewhere because this thing is published. He started laughing. He goes, don't you understand? 95% of what's published is wrong. I never forgot that. And in the medical field, it's even worse. I just looked at something. They analyzed 1,000 fish oil studies. They could only take 14 that met a criteria of double-blind, placebo-controlled. Out of 1,000, 14 could even be used. Most of them failed. They weren't positive studies, but only 14 could be used. And let me say this with fish oil. There's 4 pharmaceutical companies, drug companies, that have drug-based fish oil. Pharmaceutical companies do clinical trials. They can only get one indication for pharmaceutical drug-grade fish oil, which is lowering hypertriglycerides above 500. They failed on any cardiovascular benefit. They failed on any Alzheimer's benefit, on any macular degeneration benefit, on any cancer benefit. Failed. And this is the end of the story. All you have to ask is, are there pharmaceutical companies with drug indications for fish oil? And the answer is no. I don't know what else to say. Because if it worked, there would be. And there's 4 companies, they can't get it. Because
Listen,
it doesn't work. And the science, if you get PEO solution, you will see how it can't possibly work. It's not in the cell. When I hear things like, fish oil gives you softer skin. How? It's not in the skin. How can it help cardiology? It's not in the intima. It's not in the artery at all. How does it do it? I always ask, Doc, show me the metabolic pathway. First I go, if this was true, could it be true? What is the metabolic pathway? Typically that ends it right there. They just look at me, their eyes glaze over. How does it work? We don't know is not sufficient. Now I know there's drugs that have that. The FDA will let you do that. I can't even, as an engineer, how do I design the bridge so it doesn't fall down? I don't know. It just
I think I know people would say this, well, how do you answer the question, the people that get on some fish oil? And I think the one thing when people would say is, well, I thought my joints felt a little better. I had less pain. Now, I know that when you talk about it, the omega-6 actually has more direct avenues into the pain pathways than omega-3 in a positive way. Kind of explain that, and how could they have gotten a positive result?
I'll tell you exactly how, because it took me a while to think about this, because I would get this when I'd lecture, especially in the skin. If you're deficient in parent omega-3, unadulterated, organic parent omega-3, most people aren't getting enough of that, you will be deficient in the derivatives because your body can't make it. Absolutely. So getting the fish oil short term, under 3 months, you can get a positive effect. And people do. Longer than 3 months, you are getting the effect of a long-term steroid. And you know as well as any physician how you don't want a long-term steroid if you can avoid it whatsoever. Absolutely. And that is the problem today. Most of the studies with fish oil are very short-term, and they know what they're doing. Because if you go out a couple of years, you are ruining the brain, you are ruining the skin, you're ruining the cardiovascular system. I'm terrified what's going to happen in another 10 years. And I feel very sorry for the fish oil proponents because they actually believe it works.
Absolutely.
They really do. But the problem is a true scientist is obligated to look at the science and tell people every time it doesn't work, and they won't do that, which is simple.
When I looked at the literature, right, I came across, and you know, this has been something I've been through for many years. Yeah. And when I had to do a lecture on this, you know, to a group of doctors, I knew I had to make recommendations with fish oil. After reviewing all the literature, I said, okay, maybe short term, because that's where the studies were. There were any benefit I could find. I mean, I didn't review as many as you, but I did a lot. And I found the short term, higher dose, short term, and then it went negative, right? So it's like, because I found all, so I said, okay, maybe there's an argument for that. Well, after reading your stuff even in deeper, I said, okay, I'm even changing my recommendation on that. And you answered my question as far as why you might, there's a safer way.
Yes.
To get the same result. Let's talk about that. So, you know, because the omega-6 actually has, you know, an amazing anti-inflammatory effect. So
PGE1. Well, I've even had people with dry eye saying, Brian, I've been on massive fish oil and it works, but I'm petrified of the negatives. I read your PEO solution and we did some experiments. I said, look, and I'll talk to some supplement companies and I'm sure they'll give you some of the oils free. Start taking it. And within 3 months, superior to the fish oil. So the omega-6-3 combo with GLA does work. PGE1 is the body's #1 anti-inflammatory. You mentioned that. That really needs to be talked about. That is on the omega-6 side. And what everybody alludes to is, oh, we don't convert much because this is the delta-6 desaturase. Okay, and this is what you mentioned earlier where you don't make much of this. It's 1/4%, 0.5%, nothing more than that for all the derivatives, never mind just the PGE1. But that is your body's #1 anti-inflammatory, #1 vasodilator. So blood flow to the brain, Alzheimer's, dementia, bye-bye. Blood flow to the organs with the cardiovascular system. It makes your arteries open. It makes your artery flexible, so your artery isn't like a straw and cracking. That's what happens on the inside. So it stops adhesion of the platelets. It is critical, and I never hear anybody talk about PGE1. It's one for a reason. It is the most important, most powerful, natural anti-inflammatory. You have arthritis problems, 80% chance within 90 days, it will be down by half to 75% or eliminated.
Yeah.
20 times more powerful than any of the omega-3 series side. See, the omega-6 series is infinitely more powerful than the 3 because all of our food is omega-6 based.
Yeah.
And in animals, even the animals that live on grass, the cows, what is the ratio of grass-fed beef? It's 2 to 1. So
2 to 1, 1 to 4.
Of 6 to 3. Even though the 3 is hugely predominant in grass, it burns it up and doesn't allow it. Now, we can't burn all of it up the way the cow can, but even nature knows very little omega-3 based foods, and even if the animal's eating that outside of humans, which we shouldn't be because it's in virtually nothing, we don't live on grass, the cow burns it up. So omega-6 is critical for the omega-6 pathway. PGE1, I talk about it extensively in the book. It will also dissolve the blood clot in the artery.
Yeah. So in review, the undenatured omega-6 is the key to fixing the epidemic of inflamed cells, cellular dysfunction, and I 100% agree.
The inflamed cell you just mentioned is now known as the cause of cancer.
Absolutely.
Weinberg reversed it. He's an MIT guy. He came up with the oncogene. He reversed it, said there's not enough genetic mutations for cancer to be caused from that. You need at least 6. There's only 2 or 3. He reversed it. Now it is known, and all the inflammation, remember I told you before, the inflammation comes from the adulterated omega-6 we're eating. It's already a poison too, ready-made. That's why we have an inflammatory diet, and that's why 6 or 8 years out of eating processed food, everybody gets cancer. And here's the statistics. 70% of men get cancer. Prostate's through the roof.
Yeah.
The average man will get cancer, 70%, 53% of women. The average person, you will have cancer because how could you not? You're eating this stuff. And there's no reason for it. In the 1920s, 5%. Brian, they didn't track it back then. They sure as heck did. It was known in every medical journal in 1900 what cancer was. So that's wrong. It did not exist. Pre-1940, there were 0 type 2 diabetics, and I was one of the first to say diabetes is an unknowingly created disease. Now, when you get your cell membrane fixed, guess what? Insulin works better.
Boom. I mean, and that's it. The receptors are on the membrane. So, folks, whether we're talking hormone conditions, thyroid, diabetes, if you don't fix the membrane, you won't fix the receptor. You're not going to fix the problem. So this topic goes into all these things, the epidemic of diabetes, hormone conditions. That's what we're talking about here. What about brain conditions? What about dementia and Alzheimer's? Because this is an exploding epidemic.
No, it is.
Fish oil to fix this. Correct them, Doc.
Fish oil fails every time they do it. You can read them yourself. Just pull up on the internet. Is there any fish oil trial reversing it?
No.
The answer is no. There's no drug to reverse it either. And again, we have 4 fish oil drug companies. Took me a long time looking at this. I knew it had to be cardiovascular. And then after more research, there's at least 100 million capillaries in the brain. What do capillaries do? That is where the nutrient transfer, the oxygen transfer is taking place. What are they made of? 100% parent omega-6. There's no DHA, no EPA, no parent omega-3 in any capillary. So you have 100 million that are deficient, defective, with no nutrient transfer and no oxygen transfer. Okay.
Correct. By the way,
trial they do fails for dementia.
It's one of the reasons when we put these patients and clients into ketosis, they go, oh my gosh, my brain's working better, because we bypass the oxygen, the glucose that's not getting in there. Sorry, we had someone come in. My dog's gonna bark. So, but yeah, I mean, it's so true.
You're all looking in the wrong place. It's beta amyloid. Why do you think the protein is spilling out? I didn't say this before, but half of the cell membrane is protein, half of it's lipid. What's happening is when you have the defective cell membrane, it's opening up. Yeah. And what flows out? The protein. So you have the protein, the beta amyloid, spilling out, and you actually think just scraping it off is going to solve anything? All they look at is we need to get rid of this beta amyloid. Right. And it keeps failing. They just spent another 800 million, I think, this year on another Alzheimer's dementia failure. Yeah. It's all in the capillaries and the cell membrane structure.
Oh, man. I got goosebumps. I'm coming out of my skin because this is something I've been talking about for years.
Well, we've had people, Dr. Jeff Matheson, who you mentioned before, has had people take the memory test and gotten better, which is unprecedented. Typically with dementia, they try and minimize the worsening. They're less worse today. That's great. Well, I don't want less worsening. I want reversal. I don't have any interest in making you less dead tomorrow and less sick. I want your reverse to get healthy. Well, I had that, and he was shocked because no drug can do that.
Look, I wouldn't have got my life back if I didn't fix the membranes and the efforts in the fats. Right. And it wasn't fish oil. It wasn't not part of any of my protocols. Never.
But you're not part of fish.
Yeah, well, it's true. Well, Meredith, I know Meredith's dying to ask some questions because she is probably thinking of many questions our viewers and listeners have.
Oh my gosh, I have so many questions, which I know we don't have a ton of time, but so just to kind of review and get started too. So we're taking out the fish oils, removing all the unadulterated toxic fats, and cleaning up our diet, putting those, healthy fats in.
As much as you can, clean up the diet.
Right, as much as possible.
Do it all, but make a dent, and that's enough. So instead of 2 fast food burgers, you have 1. Or instead of 1, you have a half.
I have 0. And our listeners have 0.
0 is ideal. But most people won't do it. See, I'm an engineer. I'm a practical guy. So you don't have to be a monk. You don't have to be like Dr. Rowan, who's 100% raw foods vegan. He'll even tell you, do 80%. I'm over the moon. So they don't have to be that strict as long as you get the good stuff. Good point, Meredith.
Right. Right. So yeah, so doing our best. I'm just curious specifically too, because I eat a lot of like canned sardines and wild salmon and oysters. And are those good to eat?
Sardines are pretty good. If you're going to eat any fish at all, a sardine is probably your best one.
Okay.
Really, I hope you get them from, a good place in Portugal or something. You don't need a lot of them. I mean, you need very few, but if you want to eat a can a week of those, not bad. And there is in the fish itself parent omega-6 and parent omega-3. So if you cook a fish, most of that fish oil is gone. Remember, fish oil is a highly
so you're not overdosing.
Regardless of what they say, we're not ingesting all the fish oil.
So you're not getting the overdose because you're cooking the fish.
No, you can eat fish. That's not the issue. I'm not anti-fish. Of course, I don't want farm fish. I'd much rather see wild fish, but you don't need to be anti-fish, but it's not the be-all to end-all. The Japanese eat a pile of fish. They're not as healthy as you would think.
No, no doubt.
Well, and how about eating algae too? We have some amazing algae products that we use where you're literally just kind of eating the raw algae. How would that come into play?
It's hard to get enough of it just because of the density. You need a fair amount of this. You need about 3 grams a day of the oils, which is still very little. The algae may have the parent omega-6, parent omega-3. I'm not sure what the ratios are. Probably going to still have a lot of the DHA, EPA in it, probably, because it's marine-based. So anything that's marine-based is going to be predominantly DHA, EPA because it can't freeze. And that's not what a human being needs. Now, it is in the brain, but it stays in the brain an average of 2.5 years. It doesn't go bad. That's where the antioxidants stay. That's where you get the 3.6 milligrams. It has a half-life of 2.5 years. This is all in my book. It's incredible. And if you don't know that, you'd go, of course you need tons of DHA, EPA every day to support the brain. The brain's pretty heavy. No, you don't. it lasts unless you're overdosing in a fish oil, in which case you're using all your natural antioxidants and you have a severe problem. But I got off the point a little, Meredith. Let me answer the next one. So it's just hard to get the amount you need.
Right. It's amazing how the body adapts, though. And I was kind of curious, too, if you could explain a little bit more. I was looking through your book, and it stood out to me as a woman, the issue with PEOs and deficiency in cellulite. If you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I discovered this actually with my wife. She was getting the age where that was in there. It is strictly a cell membrane issue. Nothing special. Guys can have it too. You put these oils back in, within 90 days, it will be down by about half. You give it a year, it will be like a young girl again, because now it's getting younger and younger. I was in South Beach a few years ago with Dr. Cavallino from Italy. He's a judge in the most beautiful, women in the world in Italy contest. And he couldn't believe what America's come to, even the rest of the world, because they follow America's diets. 20-year-old, 25-year-old women, massive cellulite problem. Sure. But if you solve the cell membrane issue, it's gone. It is so easy. All you gotta do is take it. It's so easy to fix this, but you don't need a lot of the lasers. You don't need a lot of the other stuff. That's not long lasting. I deal in physiology. So this fixes it at the tissue level. Excellent question. And your skin, Meredith, becomes like butter. My wife, of course, takes the oils. Skin is, every woman looks at her. How is your skin like this? How is your skin? And the fingernails become like glass. You can't break them. Most women have very weak fingernails. You take this. A surgeon I just talked to said, Brian, I used my thumbnail in surgery. Not sure why, but he's a top surgeon. He goes, after taking these oils about 3-4 months, my thumbnail is so strong, it makes my surgery better. And he goes, my attention span is up. He's a top surgeon to begin with. I think I'm operating 10 to 15% better. Can you imagine this? A world-class surgeon going up 10 to 15% because of the oils. Better eye-hand coordination and focus. This is your brain with the Alzheimer's dementia thing you're talking about. The concentration goes through the roof. So your kids, phenomenal improvement. What an advantage your child will have, whether they're in high school, elementary school, kindergarten, college, than someone not taking these oils. But yeah, back to the cellulite. Look, I like beautiful women as much as the next guy. And you can be gorgeous with excellent skin into your 70s. You really can be.
Wow. Well, I think you sold a lot of people and a lot of viewers on that right there. And just kind of curious too, if you can explain, so, we can really key in on our diet, but if we do feel like we need a supplement, if there's maybe some areas in our diet that are lacking, we don't feel confident that we can fully just kind of balance all of our deficiencies with just diet alone, what would your requirements be for a supplement? For
a supplement, you absolutely have to have more parent omega-6 than parent omega-3, anywhere above 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 2.5 to 1, has to be above, has to be organically grown, no pesticides, no chemicals, has to be organically processed. You need to check the oxidation level, especially penicillin. That is a secondary aldehyde that nobody checks. If you check fish oil, it will be 19. Toxic is 20. So wow. Fish oil in the capsule, this doesn't get published, is on the edge of horrific damage. Secondary aldehydes ruin your DNA, ruin everything. So parent omega-6, parent omega-3, penicillin is 4. Don't even have close to any issue. You need to have GLA in there to bypass the delta-6 desaturase enzyme, because all we hear about is, the impairment is slow, everybody's impaired, there's no conversion, and this makes the DHA, EPA, GLA, everything goes through it. Well, if you give the GLA, and evening primrose is great for that GLA portion, you bypass it, so you ensure diabetics, alcoholics, anybody that has any kind of impairment, And these diseases will have an impairment. It's not what they tell you where it's 80% or 50%, but even a 20% impairment to PGE1 is enormous. We need all the PGE1 we can get. So more parent omega-6 and omega-3 has to be organic, has to contain GLA. Evening primrose is the ideal place, has to have a nitrogen bubble in it so you don't have the oxygen in there. I like a hard capsule because they're closer to glass, so I like a hard gelatin capsule, and I advise any of the companies I consult for to use that, to not use a soft gel cap in this particular product. It could be used elsewhere, but not in these oils because they are reactive, those sort of things. But those are the top 5.
I know companies pay you to consult, and you know, I know, Meredith, we did give them the show that we did because that's one of the companies that is based on his science. So we did a show. So give that episode number. That'll help.
Yep. So it's with Dr. Jeff Matheson, and it's episode number 188. It's called "Is Fish Oil Toxic?" And you can learn about more about a product that kind of falls underneath these requirements that Professor Peskin has for a product. So that's 188. And what about dosing? I'm curious about that.
Excellent question. This is all I do over 20 years for prophylactic use, meaning you have no disorder disease. 1 725 milligram capsule per every 40 pounds, a teaspoon or a half a teaspoon for a 160-pound person is perfect. It's that powerful. If you use my recommended formulation criteria, that is all you need, a half teaspoon for a 160-pound person. Now, it's proportional to body weight because remember, this gets incorporated into every one of your 100 trillion cells, and it makes a long change too. If you have any kind of ailment, you know, arthritis, diabetes, heart disease, you could take up to triple short term. You know, triple can be 3-4 months. Double, you can live on day and night. I typically run on double the normal amount because I'm working, you know, I could be up at 4:30 in the morning and go to bed at midnight. If you're under mental duress, physical duress, an athlete, you take 2 725 milligram capsules before you work out. You won't have the lactic acid burn if you're a bodybuilder. If you're a pro sports athlete person, it's incredible. So you don't need a lot, but about 3 grams of this formulation for a 160-pound person. It's incredible how little you need, how powerful it is.
Well, listen, we're out of time. We could keep going. Professor,
check out my website, and there's a lot of info on there.
Get to his website. It's your name, brianpeskin.com, and get the book. It's required reading for my docs, no doubt. Listen, we're going to blow it up with this. You know, no doubt we're going to do an article with this. We're going to get this out there. Why? Because people need this message. Doc, thanks for, you know, putting it out there, no doubt. And
appreciate it so much.
Our group, we're going to get you the seminar. Meredith?
Yep. All right. Thank you, Dr. Pompa. Thank you so much, Professor Peskin, for what you're doing, too, for getting this information out. It's so important. So much of this just blew my mind. This book is absolutely incredible. BrianPeskin.com or PEO-solution.com as well. You can learn more and get some of the chapters for free as well. So thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
This is mine. Thank you.